This is Let's Talk Business with your host, Marc Ebinger. Now, here's Marc.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk Business podcast. Coming up on the show today, we're going to talk about structuring your business to run without you, and we're going to talk about PITA, or pain in the ass clients.
Yeah,
I
you
think
really
that'll be
need
kind
to
of fun. Because at some point, you know, you're running your business, you're chasing everybody with a credit card, but at some point you might be like, you know what, I need to kind of thin out my clientele a little bit to get rid of those ones that are really costing me more hassle than they're worth. I'm your host, Marc Ebinger, the CEO of Crewcus Virtual Staffing, a company that recruits and staffs experienced overseas administrative assistants for insurance agents and attorneys. So if you're curious about the most common tasks that virtual assistants are doing for businesses, head over to our website at crewcus.com and grab a list of the top 20 tasks that VAs are doing for businesses like yours. Link is in the podcast description.
And my name is Heather Rose Boehme. I'm a certified business coach and owner of Onset Professional Development, where we help people implement structure in their business, or in a more relatable way to put it, we potty train your business so it can grow without being a pain in the butt.
I saw your potty train video. I like that.
Thank you.
Commented on it. I'm Howie Nestel, and we do not potty train our clients in marketing, but we do help our marketing clients grow their influence through digital marketing. Sharkmatic Advertising is a cool ad agency that I've been running now for 3 decades. So before the internet before marketing was the internet and digital, it was radio, television, print, billboards, and all the old school stuff. So I bring that mindset of storytelling to modern day deliverable channels, which is all the digital stuff. So if you want to learn a little bit more about us, go to sharkmatic.com.
A quick reminder to follow the Let's Talk Business podcast on all major podcast platforms and social media, where you can catch video versions of the show and get to everything easily from our website at satalkradio.com. We've got our next mixer coming up on March 27th. It'll be a Thursday from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. Tickets are on sale now for just $20. If you're going to be here in the San Antonio area, make sure you grab a couple of tickets, bring some friends. It's going to be a great time. It's a huge expo-style mixer with lots of networking. There's going to be vendor tables where you can chat it up with local businesses and take advantage of some great deals and make some good friends and business contacts. Of course, there's going to be great snacks and plenty of alcohol drinks.
And it's at a great venue, Aggie Park. And so for those of you who've not been to Aggie Park, or the ones that have been there in the old days, it's off of West Avenue and Loop 410. It's been completely remodeled and updated, and it's a lot bigger. And that's why we have room for the vendors and the sponsors. And there's a cool outdoor area as well.
And there's so much parking.
Yeah, a lot of parking.
I feel like you got to specify that nowadays, because I'll look at places downtown. I'm like, do I really want to go to this event?
Not unless it's free parking.
No,
I hate paying for parking.
Oh, it's one of my pet peeves. Hate paying for parking. I hate overpaying for gas, too.
I probably could have got us a free venue down in a nice hotel downtown for this event, but it was the whole parking thing was going to be a mess.
Also, the other thing I know about hotels is that there's no such thing as a free event. They might give you the space. Next thing you know, you have to use their catering, and then you have to use their crappy liquor. And because you can't, because of their liquor license, you're not allowed to bring in your own liquor to a hotel. There's a whole bunch of little things like that. We always got to check to make sure that free is really free. But anyway, Aggie Park, great place. And one of the reasons why we're moving is because we're outgrowing every place we've done the Let's Talk Business podcast mega mixer. So
So, of course, the net proceeds from the event are going to be going to support multiple charities here in the San Antonio area, including CRIT, which you do a tour on that every month. What happens at these tours you're doing?
So CRIT is the Children's Rehabilitation Institute, Telethon USA, a rehabilitation center for children with disabilities. And we give a behind-the-scenes tour of how this one-of-a-kind facility right here in San Antonio, one-of-a-kind in the United States, only one of its kind right here in San Antonio, treats 350 children with disabilities and their families to help kids become independent and grow up and hopefully take care of themselves. And it's quite amazing. They don't charge the families anything for this kind of rehabilitation.
When people can take a tour, right? You do a tour once a month.
So it's a behind-the-scenes tour. And it's an incredible place. They have equipment, machinery, people. They have an indoor pool, a therapy pool. There's a lot of cool stuff. So you can go to critusa.org, but definitely reach out to one of us on the podcast, or reach out to me, Howie Nestel, on social, or howienestel.com, and send a message, and I'll put you on the list to come take a tour. It's free.
Love it. course, we're expecting to sell out again on this mixer. So head over to our website at satalkradio.com.
So that's one of the nonprofits. You said we help out several nonprofits.
Yeah, of course, there's Discovery Camps, and then there's also Gotcha Covered.
Yeah, so Discovery Camps is a camp for kids with cancer. That's discoverycamps.org. And then Gotcha Covered is Gotcha Covered Collection Drive, a one-time-a-year collection drive, collecting 70,000 pounds of donations for the people who need it most. So nothing is resold. Everything gets donated, new and used clothing, food, toiletries, and it all stays right here in San Antonio.
That's right. Love it. All right, a quick shout-out to Stacy Swift at Franchise Matchmakers for being a gold sponsor for the upcoming Let's Talk Business Mega Mixer on March 27th. With over 60 years of combined experience, Franchise Matchmakers specializes in guiding aspiring entrepreneurs to find the perfect franchise opportunities tailored to their skills, goals, interests, and financial capabilities. Their personalized approach ensures clients are matched with franchises that align with their unique aspirations. So if you're considering franchise ownership, which is, to me, is super interesting, you might as well get it kind of done for you almost as far as packaging goes and the support. And, of course, you would want the expert guidance.
Yeah, you do. And it's very important. How many franchise horror stories have we heard on this podcast?
Oh my gosh. I reviewed a set of franchise documents once, and it was so interesting because I was just looking over it for a friend, and I saw that the franchise owners had set goalposts for the franchisees that they hadn't even hit yet. It was like, year 1, you have to do 150. Year 2, you have to do 350. Year 3, you have to be at 750. Right. And they had never broke 400,000. And I was like, and if the franchisee didn't hit the marks, then they could take the franchise back. So it was basically just a racket. Because if you can't do it, how can you expect somebody else to do it? And I just thought that was so shady.
Yeah, so it's a great, that's very interesting that there is a franchise coach, somebody who can guide you into finding the right franchise for you. Matchmaker, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Stacy's been at it for a very, very long time. So if you're considering franchise ownership and seeking expert guidance, which everybody should if you're getting into this world, because it's not as simple as maybe you think it is, be sure to check them out at franchisematchmakers.com, or you can call them at 303-887-8887. Make sure you reach out to Stacy Swift at Franchise Matchmakers. Lots of years in the industry, at least 20 years in the industry. Definitely a professional and worth the phone call. And they get paid by the franchisors. They don't get paid by the franchisees.
It's like a real estate agent, but for franchises.
Yeah,
so if you're going to buy a house with a real estate agent, you need to buy a franchise with a franchise agent.
Yeah,
it only makes sense.
Well, if you remember the old model of travel agents got paid by the hotel or by the airlines because you're bringing them quality leads. It just makes sense.
Roger that. Right, so for folks that have watched the show on a regular basis, you knew that I was out sick a couple weeks ago, and I got hit pretty hard, ended up in an emergency room. It's a whole thing. Got tested for stroke. They thought I had a stroke because I couldn't even talk. When you
I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. I was remembering this actually while I was going through it when we were at the Crit get together, and there was a lady in a wheelchair, and she couldn't talk real well. And, so she's doing the very best she can to try and talk. She has cerebral
palsy.
Yes. Mine was worse than that. That's how bad it was.
That's scary.
Yeah, well, they thought I had a stroke. And, I couldn't. They were like, okay, well, so they put their finger up and they say, okay, well, touch your finger to my finger. I couldn't even do that. I'm like doing this here. It's just a really crazy thing that I went through. But all that just to say is just really made an impression on me on how amazing the body is and what it takes to run this whole machine. Because it's crazy. Even eating food, I had applesauce and I could not clear my mouth of the applesauce. It was actually in there, and I'm actually wiping with using tissues to try and get the stuff out of because I couldn't even swallow, right? It's just a really crazy experience that I went through. Scared Jennifer quite a bit.
Oh, I'm sure.
So for entrepreneurs, we do a lot of the business, heavy lifting in the business. Now, in my operation, I don't do execution of services. I do sales, I do networking, stuff like that. Of course, a lot of networking. But I have to be able to talk, and this is something that was a little freaky for me because I didn't know if this was a stroke. It wasn't a stroke, but if it was, what would that mean for my business going forward? So for entrepreneurs who are out there and we're building this business that we're super passionate about, if it's the thing that is supporting us and our family, we need to be looking at ways to systemize things and to grow our way out of the company in a way that allows the company to function and to grow without us. I think that is just a very responsible thing to do when your family is dependent upon you. So it was really a wake-up call for me, and I've already kind of been through this. There's some restructuring of my life that actually is going to come out of this because I took a look at things that are working or aren't working and whatever. So I need to like restructure some things that I'm doing. But it was a scary time. So that's really what I wanted to kind of talk about here is
a great topic. Oh my God. And we all think we're immortal and we all think that we're not going to get derailed. And if anything, there'll be a bump in the road, but sometimes there's a detour and that's a detour and you don't know if you're going to get back on the main road. And there's so many moving parts. It's not just, well, I have key man insurance or key woman insurance. Well, that's fine and dandy. That's just going to pay the salary that you would ordinarily make if you need to be replaced in your company for a finite amount of time. That doesn't ensure your company's going to succeed. I mean, if I had key man insurance, who's going to replace my erratic schedule of all the things I have going on in my head? Nobody would do the job for what I get paid. See what I'm saying? And they wouldn't be able to do it. So there are more moving parts than just that. So I'd love to draw on the military, and I'm pointing at you. But every time we've had military people here, somehow the conversation rolls around to something they learned in the military that they implemented in their business. And one really good one are SOPs. You talk to most business owners and you ask them about standard operating procedures. They're like, what do you mean? Like things that we write down of how we do stuff? And I'm talking about like a real SOP. Go talk to any military person about a standard operating procedure. You don't deviate from it. You teach it. You learn it. You follow it. You get the same results.
Well, it's
Now-
business
it's
owners don't have that
too.
because
That's
it's constantly evolving.
That's the thing, though. Like SOPs, I feel like it's one of those things. It's like, oh, yeah, you need car insurance. And they roll their eyes and like kind of just keep going out about their day. But I'm interested in the psychology of it because entrepreneurs are not like your risk adverse, love stability, want to get the same thing every time type of people, right? If they were, they'd probably be in 9-to-5 W-2 jobs. So I'm a person who helps businesses create and implement processes, but I was talking to Mark about this, and I actually have a harder time selling it because they're like, yeah, we need that. We'll do it later.
Right.
So what is that pain point? Do you have to almost die to realize you need this structure? Like, what was that like, just realizing that?
Well, it's very humbling. I think, when you have everything taken away from you, I can't get up and down the stairs. I can't go to the bathroom. Literally, going to the bathroom was extremely difficult for me. Getting it up and down from the toilet is something that was difficult.
How long were you incapacitated?
So I went into the emergency room on Wednesday because I hadn't taken in any water or food for 3 full days. So at some point you're like, something's, I got to do something different here, which, by the way, is an $8,000 emergency room trip that really didn't do a whole lot for me other than give me an IV bag, I think, which was helpful. But, at the end of the day, it probably wasn't worth the expense other than realizing, okay, it wasn't a stroke, which I think was powerful. But so come Tuesday night, Wednesday morning was when I was like completely incapacitated through probably Thursday, where the whole day Thursday, where I was like pretty much 100%. I mean, it's a totally, when you lose your ability to function, it is, everything becomes hyper surreal on what you can and can't do and how amazing the body is. I keep going back to that because it's absolutely amazing how much it takes to operate just your mouth.
Yeah. Well, we have a friend and who's an insurance guy, and he had a stroke in his early 40s. Otherwise, healthy, golfer, traveling. He was relaxing. He said, because one of the neurologists said to him, it could be stress. Maybe it was induced by stress, whatever. He said, what were you doing when it happened? He goes, I was coming back from a trip overseas. I was super relaxed, and I was at the airport. All of a sudden, I couldn't move. I ended up laying down, ended up in the ER. It was a stroke. And he was in a very calm state at the time it happened, coming off of a week of being on vacation on the beach. It's not that. And so sometimes you just don't know. I think part of it, that's what makes life exciting and worth living, but it also says you have to be prepared. So SOPs, is there somebody else that can do your job? So I talked to a guy who was a Army paramedic, and he said everybody has a backup job. So my backup job was a sniper. So I could be a paramedic and I could be on the battlefield. But if one of the snipers gets taken out, guess what? I'm still a paramedic, but if I'm not paramedicing, I'm shooting people. You know? And so do you have people in your office that do their job plus can do somebody else's job on a pinch? And the way he phrased it was, one monkey don't stop the show. So if, you know, you have an office of 5 and the person who normally sends out the invoices isn't there that day, and the boss comes in and says, hey, can we shoot an invoice? Or, oh, no, but John didn't come in today. The answer should be, one monkey don't stop the show. Who knows how to do John's job? Because I need somebody to do the invoice and send it out right now.
I call it single point of failure. And it's shocking how big companies can get and still have single point of failure. My dad is currently a single point of failure in a Fortune 500 company for one of their $1 million departments. If he goes away, they lose at least $1 million of revenue, and they still refuse to give him a raise. And it's wild because no one else can do his job.
Well, so like NASA says, 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right? You know, I heard that from Armageddon, that movie. But like in mine, on the recruiting and HR side of it, I've got now 3, 1 part-time and then 2 full-time, so that there's redundancy in that operation so that it can function without one person, or it can absolutely 100% function without me for quite a while. There's just some minor things that I need to do, which I don't even need to talk for, by the way, which is cool. But having redundancy within your operation, but then also systemizing things. And this is, to your point, your question earlier about at what point do people realize, oh, shit, I better get my act together here and have systems and processes in place so that my business can continue to function without me, or better yet, it can grow without me.
Well, it's interesting because I listen to a lot of personal development, business books, speakers, etc. And if you start to look at commonalities, most of them have that, like, what is it? The rock bottom moment, or they had a really scary moment. Hal Heiben? What's his name? He's the Morning Miracle guy. He got
I know. I have that
crushed
book.
by a car, right?
Right.
And it's almost like everybody assumes that the 100% death rate doesn't apply to them until something catastrophic happens. But then they see these big speakers and these people, and they're like, well, I haven't hit rock bottom. Well, I haven't almost died, so it doesn't apply to me. And my thought is, like, how do we make that more relatable? Because you don't have to almost die to put preparation measures in place, but the fear of being incapacitated doesn't seem to be enough. And that's where I think there's a little bit of a disconnect, especially in the risk-taking psychology of an entrepreneur, because for them, that negative consequence will not apply to them until it finally does.
My guess is that for your business is that you're looking for the lookers. You're not looking to try and convert somebody who's not ready yet. Because the amount of information is just not going to be there. Maybe they have to have gone through something, or they're in that growth stage. Chris Cavazos, he's working 2 days a week on his law firm, and it's growing. But he's working on the business when he's taking his time to do that kind of stuff. He's there. He's hungry for the information rather than trying to sell it to people who aren't ready for that.
Yeah, I know of very few businesses that are small businesses that can not only survive but thrive or grow without the CEO, without the founder. Mine certainly could not. No slam on my staff, and that's my fault, not theirs, because I haven't taught them or conveyed all of the things that they would need to know to help the business grow. They could certainly maintain it. I just got back from a 2-week trip. We didn't miss a beat while I was gone. I could be gone for a month. That
speaks very, very well of you and your ability to take care of your existing clients. I think that's awesome. The next step, of course, is replacing yourself. Is that even something you're open to doing?
You know, I thought about it. I'm open to it, you know, but I've also thought about what if somebody were to buy my business, but then what would I do? And I always talk about, I'm not defined by what I do. I'm not defined by advertising, but in many ways, it's part of my identity because
Yes.
I leverage my ad agency to help nonprofits. So how effective am I going to be helping a nonprofit when I don't have an ad agency to help them promote an event that could raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for them, when I'm just a guy that can now go sort cans at the food bank, you know, because I don't have an ad agency they can leverage or I can leverage. You see what I'm saying?
Why is the only option for you to exit selling it?
No, it's not. It's not. But I got invited to an exit summit, an exit strategy summit. I was fascinated. All these people selling their companies. I'm like, yes, you know, just like a typical entrepreneur in shiny object syndrome. I want to sell my company. Anybody have a 1.3 billion? I don't have to have all cash. I'll do 800 million in cash and the rest in stock options. But one of the guys I was just with, actually the guy that was piloting and has a boat, part of the reason why he has that kind of money to buy a jet and a little boat, a big boat, a 50-footer, is because he sold his staffing company to a national staffing company. He got paid a ton of money. He sold them the company. He got a contract to stay on and do acquisitions. So he gets paid only on acquisitions of new companies. So he doesn't have to be at the office 9 to 5. He doesn't have to do any of the things he used to do as the CEO of the company before. They now run the show the way they run all their staffing companies. But they're saying, hey, go find us more like you to go buy. And he gets paid. But I asked him, you love it? He goes, there's probably things I would have done differently. It was an adjustment period to go from the founder CEO to an employee. But because I can't complain about the money. And then I have stock ownership in the bigger company. They gave me some in stock options, and I've liquidated some of that. But at some point, it doesn't become about the money.
How does he use his free time?
He's actually flying veterans because his dad was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, but he flies veterans across the country in his own plane that need surgeries and things like that, or things where there's no Mediport. So he's licensed to do medical transport, but he also takes children with cancer or disabilities on flights.
What's the name of that? Because that sounds familiar to me.
The name of
what he's working with to fly
foundation.
folks around.
Oh, I don't know the name of the foundation, but I'll look on his Facebook post because, yeah, it's not Wounded Warriors, not any of that.
No,
but
there's something Angels.
Yes,
something or
that's
another.
it. That's the one.
Okay.
That's the one. And the cool thing is that, you know, it's pretty expensive to fly your own private jet. I don't have one, but I can assume it's.
You've heard.
Yeah, I've heard. I've seen the prices of gas. I'm like, how many miles a gallon does that thing get?
Good
Anyway,
question.
but he said that the nonprofit will many times reimburse him for the fuel cost.
Oh, okay.
And then, but when he flies kids, he'll just do it because they'll hear of a cancer organization. They're trying to do something, or he's like, I'll fly him there, and he pays for it. What
would you do if you had that much time and money?
Want to start another business? That's my problem. It's in my DNA to be in business. So when I sold my 3 other companies in 2019, my philosophy was, if I feel like starting another business, now that I'm down to 1, I'm going to lay down until the urge passes.
Oh, but you started another business.
But I did start another one. But the way I justified that is that I started thinking and bugging who became my future partners way before I decided that I was not going to start more businesses. So in order to be a man of my word, I had to follow through with it because I had started before I said I was
sold yourself on something. Huh?
Yeah. and then of course my staff said, yeah, you keep telling yourself that and you'll probably believe it if you tell yourself enough times. But I also justified that when that's a real estate flipping business, and I don't know anything about real estate. I don't know anything about construction. I can't screw in a door hinge. So I figured I can be a silent investor, silent partner in it. But of course, 1, you hear me running my mouth. I'm not silent about anything. I was going to say silent. Number 2, it's funny. 2 of my partners, Jaime and Vaughn, said, hey, you can come to the day when we're going to pick materials and colors and all that. But Jaime said, do me a favor. We have people who know what they're doing. So if you come, just don't say anything. Like, okay. So I showed up to the first one and we bought the house and we're picking colors, materials, roofing. And I'm just like biting my tongue, I'm like, nice colors. Have we ever considered anything in the gray tones? I mean, I don't know what the...
No.
He's like, remember.
Stop with the millennial gray. Sorry.
Oh,
I have a big problem with
so
gray.
Anyway, the house sold. No thanks to any colors I picked because we went with what the experts said, and but it is. I would probably do only nonprofit stuff, and I would have to reinvent myself in a way of doing it without the marketing component. So I would use my experience in other stuff to help nonprofits. But I don't know. I would be fulfilled, but I don't know that would be enough because I define myself not so much as a philanthropist, but I define myself as an entrepreneur who's philanthropic, not as a philanthropist who happens to own a business.
Yeah, the philanthropy is really kind of a place to go do some good with the stuff that you're doing, but really you want to be about the work of entrepreneurship,
right?
And then let it flow.
Oh, yeah. I bet you talk to Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, all these people, they see themselves as business people. They don't see themselves as philanthropists, even though they're giving away tens of billions of dollars.
I like the excitement of the entrepreneurship, but creating cash flow is something that I'm kind of all about right now. It's like, there's things you can get involved in don't generate cash flow, but when you have cash flow, you can kind of have everything else.
Yeah. So back to the psychology, I think there's a God complex in entrepreneurs. Because if you think about it, we're creating something out of nothing, right? That's kind of one of the attributes of God, right? Is that there was nothing, then some power created a planet, created animals and plants and water, and let there be sun and let there be light, and there was light. So an entrepreneur has an idea. It doesn't exist. They go get a assumed name certificate and a bank account. Next thing you know, they spin up a business, and now it's making money. It's employing people. It's got clients. You're like, ooh, wow, you created that. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this God complex, and that, I'll figure this thing out. And that's probably why they don't like predictability. They don't want a formula. They don't want. It's easier, but.
And see, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I was forced onto this path of entrepreneurship and self-reflection and discipline. And so I think I come at it more from the integrator mindset, where I'm like, I want to be able to know what's going on, but do as little work as possible and have stability. Like, I don't really like risk, and I'm forced to take it all the time. So I have to constantly be outside of my comfort zone in entrepreneurship and figuring out like what works for me. Have you guys ever heard of the concept of shine?
I have not.
Okay. So
Shine?
It is something I am currently a little obsessed with. It's that feeling you get when you do something that's like really exciting or you really love to do, right? And it's just like, for me, it's like when I do something a little above and beyond for people and they're just thrilled at it.
How is that different from flow?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just resonated with the word shine, and I'd never heard of it until then. But I don't know how many business owners actually utilize that in their business. They go and they do and they think and they work, but how often are they in that state of flow in what they do? Where's yours?
Oof. I don't even know that I can measure it, because sometimes I don't even recognize that I'm in it. And when I'm in it, I don't really tabulate how long I was in it. But I can tell you that I'm in flow at some point almost every single day. And sometimes it's at night, and I'm not I whip out the laptop and start writing stuff. It's going on in my head. And I'll make notes. I keep 2 phones next to my bed. I'm typing up notes, or I'll record a word, or I'll let it marinate in my head, or I'm listening to something and I'm in flow, something related to something I'm going to work on, and I'll put it on an audio and I'm listening to it. And that's how I prepare my brain and my subconscious when I go to sleep. The last thing I do is watch, something that's upsetting or whatever. I watch something that's going to be productive, because then I'm marinating as I'm sleeping for 8 hours or 3. And then the next day, I'm chomping at the bit. Then I get that shine moment when I go and sit at a computer or I'm on the phone, and then it's just all, flowing out of me because I prepped in my mind. So when I tabulate all that time, I have no idea. But if you're not in flow or shine, it's very hard to succeed. You can make money, but I would argue that you're not successful.
And that's the thing. I don't think it's about how much time you spend in it, but if you can figure out what triggers it. Like, what is it that you do that allows you to get into that flow state? It's a little more woo-woo, but I mean, the point of business is for freedom and flexibility and for us to have fun, not for us to be miserable and put our nose to the grindstone and just work and be miserable until we get where we think we want to go. And I've heard, like, in one of my mastermind groups, one of the big guys, his whole goal in life was to hit $50 million in net worth. That was everything. Shooting for it, going for it. And he finally did it. He hit $50 million in net worth. And then he was like, now what? And it was just like he was unmoored until he figured out the next big goal. But if you've got the fulfillment piece, if you know, like, this is what I really enjoy, it doesn't matter if you're doing it in a marketing company or a manufacturing company or just for nonprofits, you enjoy the process.
Yeah, and that's why the money is usually a byproduct. It's still important. It's still the way to keep score because you want to keep score. But Mark has a problem when I talk about, I don't know, because I don't look at numbers. I have had CPAs, I've had bookkeepers, I have an in-house person who does invoicing. Unless it's the end of the year, chances are I won't even log into QuickBooks to do a comparative analysis of the previous year. I go with gut feeling, and if my bank account has more money than I started with and I was able to pay for everything I need to pay for, then I feel like it was a successful year.
So Grant Cardone, love him or hate him, right? He's got some interesting
I love
insight.
and hate him.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. Definitely polarizing per individual, which is interesting. But you have to take care of your money so your money can take care of you. And this is, of course, Heather's been my coach for a long time, and she knows that I've struggled in this area too because I don't necessarily like to pay attention to the numbers. But understanding that the money is the lifeblood of your business, and if you take care of that, then it can give you more options in what you're doing, whether it's growth or whether it's you want to start petitioning money off to do a side hustle or do an event or whatever. But you got to take care of that. You got to be aware of the numbers. And I think this is an entrepreneur flaw in a lot of our personality types that we avoid looking at those things. We just want to we're in the action sequence. We're not necessarily in the accountability sequence.
More than 90% of businesses, and I don't know the exact stat.
All stats are made up, right?
Say it with
Right.
confidence.
Yeah, 99.5% of all stats are made up. But the majority of businesses in the United States have revenues of less than $1 million. So let's say, and the average small business has 3 employees, and then a little office, and maybe some equipment. Not hard to figure out that some business owners are making it. Most business owners have bought themselves a $30,000 a year hobby. But they started a business and they don't want to abandon it because they don't want egg on their face or whatever it is.
But what's
or
your
they think
point?
it's
You're saying you don't worry about the numbers?
I have
No,
a
I'm saying
polarizing
those
opinion
are the
on
people
that.
Okay, you're right. I left that hanging. Those are the people that should be worried about money.
Shouldn't everybody be looking at the numbers, though?
No, I think at some point you operate better if you're not worried about the money.
Yeah, but then, so you talked about earlier about, okay, let's build to sell. And what's your exit strategy? How can you have an
There
exit
you
strategy?
should worry about the money.
Okay. But shouldn't that always be part of what you're
Okay,
doing?
so let's go to a pilot. You were in the Air Force. Here, I'm going to give you a flying analogy. You got to pay attention when you're taking off and there's a lot of controls and all that stuff. But if you're already cruising
Or if there's
at 30,
helicopters that are crossing your
exactly.
But that's the
But
thing,
if
is
you're
like,
cruising at 30,000 feet at 600 miles an hour, I mean, you can take a little bit of a break, but you know you're going to have to be back on when you're going to land the plane. So if you're going to want to sell it and all that stuff, yes, you should absolutely worry about. But
I think that's a bad analogy.
But that's the thing, though. It's like there's growth mode, there's maintenance mode, and then there's like landing mode, I guess. Like you're up, you're going, you're down, right? You're in growth mode. I'm in growth mode. So we have to be almost hyper vigilant on our money and like where it's going and what it's doing, because it's not steady, it's not stable. You know, we're building mode. Howie is in maintenance mode. And unless you want to grow, like, there's no problem with being in maintenance mode, and you don't have to get ready to land until you need to land or you want to go up. But that's the thing, I think, is like my big opinion on all of that, right? If you're a business owner making less than $1 million, you can't seem to figure out how to get past a certain point, is like our businesses can only grow to the point that we're willing to grow. Like, that's the big thing. It's not so much a skill set. It's not how smart you are. It's how willing you are to take action and do uncomfortable things. And so if you're willing to grow and learn and change yourself, your business is probably going to grow and change and become something different. But if you're happy where you are, you can maintain an established thing. But that's, I think, where people get in trouble. Is they hit
you're
that
right.
million.
All businesses have a lifespan. All businesses will end. They'll be bought out, they'll close, they'll be passed on to the next generation, whatever it is. And you can make the argument that it's continuing, but nothing lasts forever. So there is a point of maturity where if your costs are way below your revenue, then you could make a profit. And it might be a good strategy to stay and keep it at that plane for a while. Because what you're doing is, let's say you decide you want to take a big risk and add in widgets, and you put in all your money in widgets, and then let's say something weird happens, which I know couldn't even happen in real life. Let's say there were tariffs on those widgets, and
it
you
came
have
out of nowhere.
No, right, exactly. And you have,
Well, you had to go political, didn't
if
you?
you had to have, and you have 50 containers that are still floating out in the Pacific, and those things are going to hit the warehouse at a certain time. Yeah. Even though you may have already paid for it, you're going to pay a 25% tariff on those widgets. And then that's going to eat up all your profit. Whereas you shouldn't even have gotten to widgets to begin with. You're making plenty of money the way you were before. But if you're always in growth mode, know that you run the risk of taking a nosedive, at some point. But if you maintain and you work on again, running up the clock. Okay, you like another analogy? I know you like watching football. So I'll give you an NFL analogy.
All right.
Most teams will not run up the score. Once it's the fourth quarter and they're up by 4 touchdowns, they're going to start playing defensively because they just want to maintain that. They want to maintain that margin, and then they're going to win. And that's it. They're already thinking about the next
Turns
game.
into clock time management.
And I think it's just the different definition of winning. But like, there is one thing that I really struggled with because I was forced into growth mode, right? You guys are entrepreneurial. You always wanted to.
It's
You
like the
left
third
off
time
the
you
cliff.
brought this up.
Yeah.
But
There's
that's
a
the thing. I
story
really
here.
do want to
Therapy.
talk about it, right?
Yeah, it's therapy.
But like, I really think it's important because we always talk about systems and processes and how to do the business. But like, 90% of business is the mindset that you jump into it with. Right? And so that's the thing, is I struggled really with that need for growth as a human being versus just being forced into it, because most of us are trying to like hard shift into the next gear without recognizing that we need to learn and grow our mindsets to get into the next gear. We're just trying to force it. And that's why it's so freaking hard. I've been reading a lot of books on
interesting.
it lately.
Well, I still think, though, that even though you feel like you were forced into it and you didn't have a choice, you actually had a choice. You just didn't know what the options were.
Oh, yeah. I just chose
so
that road, and it kind of ended up here.
Correct.
And now I'm choosing, so I'm not like mad
Well,
about it.
because now you know more, and it goes back to what I like to talk about, the circle of knowledge. You make a gigantic circle. Everything in that circle is everything you ever needed to know or will need to know to be successful. You draw one line from the edge of the circle to the middle. That one line represents what you know. You draw a second line. That line represents what you know that you don't know. But those two lines are but 0.1% coverage of this entire circle of knowledge. Usually, what you don't know that you don't know is where the answer is. But people don't want to go there because it's dark, it's scary, because how am I going to know if I find it? Well, I could tell you how you're not going to find it is by never going there. And if you never go there and you always do what you know and you lead with what you know, you're going to always get the results you've always gotten.
So what drove you into entrepreneurship? Sounds like you were dragged into it there. But
Oh, I kind of was. Well, I just had a really hard experience at a job where I was basically turned from a project manager into functionally the COO of the company just because people kept quitting and they kept asking me to do more things and I didn't have the ability to set boundaries. I'd never read a business book. I had an animal science degree. So I was forced into this situation where I was running a manufacturing team with like 30 employees and doing everything from point of sale to fulfillment. And eventually it all kind of crashed and burned. And that was like one of my defining failure moments. It was horrible. And I put a lot of self-worth in my ability to
that's
do work.
C-suite level stuff. That's not entrepreneurship.
Exactly. But that's the thing is like I hit my version of rock bottom because I had failed so epically at this role, right? And at that point, it was like, what am I going to do with myself? I'm never going to work for anybody again, and I want to make a crap ton of money. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I could have just gone back to a job, but that experience of just having my confidence shattered kind of forced me to like kind of go online. But it wasn't a near-death experience. It wasn't anything crazy.
No,
It
but
wasn't
it
a
feels
huge
like
car
that.
crash.
It feels like that.
But
when
it was an
when it's that-
emotionally
yeah.
traumatic moment that kind of forced me to shift gears.
So you can make a crap load of money at another job.
Yeah.
I mean, at a job versus owning your own business. I have no stat on that I feel like making up at this point, but I have friends who work for gigantic corporations, Fortune 500 companies, and some not Fortune 500 companies, and they make a lot of money. And some of them make a lot more money than I make owning my own business. I don't know if they're any happier than I am. They certainly don't have the same amount of free time that I have, but I also don't give myself that much free time because I feel like I'm working all the time anyway when I'm thinking about stuff or answering texts or calls or whatever I'm doing. But it's the grass is always greener thing. If your goal is money, not yours, but just in general, then you have to look at all your options. If your goal is time, if your goal is meaning, something about entrepreneurship for me is that even when, and I tested this concept, by the way, in the mid-90s. I went to go work for one of my mentors who was a client of mine, and they ran a chemical company. I don't know anything about chemicals, or agricultural chemical in that. And I certainly don't know anything about agriculture. I was even that kid that couldn't even grow the coffee in the little styrofoam cup with a cotton. I was the only, mine didn't grow. Talk about an epic failure, third grade. So I told my mentor that. I said, hey, Jimmy, I said, two things I don't know about, agriculture and chemicals. And there's an agricultural chemical company. I've been doing your marketing, but that doesn't mean I'd be great at sales in that. And he goes, Howie, let me tell you something. He goes, you're bilingual. Our parent company's out of Guatemala. You're well-seasoned and well-traveled. You're a great presenter. That's all I need.
Yeah. Do what you do.
Yeah.
Sales.
He said, how much do you make in your own business? I said, well, that's, I don't know, gross, net. He goes, give me a number. So I give him a number. He says, I'll double it. You start April 1st. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what? And he goes, and if you want to do it from San Antonio, great. But if you move to Houston, I'll pay for you rent a place. I'll pay for it for 90 days. And then I'll buy you, within reason, any company car you want and pay all the expenses.
Yeah, but was there stock options?
There
Gotta
was.
have ownership, baby.
I did, but not in that company. That's a subsidiary that I worked for. I was able to buy in the Guatemalan Central American parent company, and I got paid at least 4x what I put into it. Okay. But I was forced to sell after the 3 years I worked for the company because you're not allowed to keep stock once you leave. So I sold it and 4x my money. Anyway, here's the story. I got paid more money working for him than I was able to make, even lying to myself and stretching out all the owner benefits. I could not justify not going and working for him. And I loved it and I learned a lot. But I gave him a 1-year notice that I was leaving. After 2 years, I said, Jimmy, I love you. I love this job. I love the opportunity. I got to go to the Olympics, World Cup. I traveled all over the world. expense account, stayed in hotels I would never stay on with my own money. You know, when you spend OPM, other people's money, it's a lot easier.
OPM, baby.
But I said, Jimmy, I'm going to give you 1 year and I'll help you with my replacement. But this is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my career.
All right, so let's entrepreneurship, love it. Let's talk about pain in the ass clients, or we call them PITA, right? So at some point, as an entrepreneur, you're taking everybody's credit card, right? I mean, and you're going outside your boundaries on, services and all that kind of stuff, right? This is just a thing. Then you got to start niching down, and then you got to start firing clients and stuff like that. So Howie, I know you have a lot more experience in this area, of course, than I do.
Yeah, especially since a couple of the pain in the ass clients were ones you referred to me.
Yeah, I heard about that too. But at any rate, so at what point it's going to be a cash flow thing, right? It's going to be like, all right, I'm taking in plenty of money. I feel like but is that it? Is there maybe a different time when people are going to be like, I'm going to start firing clients ahead of time, or
that's the easy one. The easy one is, do I need the money? If I need the money, I better suck it up and just take care of this client. That's the easy decision if it's just about money. But no, there are a lot of other reasons. So number one, what's the drain on the staff? And I've had clients that were demeaning and degrading to my staff. And then the minute I show up, if I'm in the next meeting, all of a sudden, client's on their best behavior. And then my staff tells me, oh my God, she's not like that when you're not here. Okay. I said, I believe you. You're not a teenager, so I believe you. I don't believe my own teenagers when they're telling me stories, but staff, I believe. So I said, I'm going to go talk to no, please don't talk to her, because then she's going to know that I told you or whatever. I said, all right, let me know if she sends an email or leaves a voicemail. And so we did this. We set up one of our clients, past clients, and she left a voicemail. I told you when I was in the office, like, forget. So I got to pick up the phone. Like, what are you doing? I go to put it on speaker. Hey, client, how's it going? Oh, hey, how you doing? I was working with one of your staffers on whatever. I go, yes. As a matter of fact, I came into the office and I hit voicemail, and I know the voicemail wasn't for me. It was for one of my staff. I said, but you've sat in meetings with me. Have you ever heard me talking to my staff that way? No. I said, well, I would appreciate it if you don't talk to my staff that way. I said, we would love to continue to serve you. We've done a great job for you. I said, and we're more likely to want to do an even better job for you if we feel like we're on the same side of the table. I don't want an antagonistic relationship with you. I feel like you're getting upset about things, and you have every right to be upset if you want to be. All I'm asking you to do is please don't take it out on my staff, whether I'm here or I'm not, or whether it's on voicemail or email. I said, I would love for this to be the last time we discuss it. Let's just put it aside and let's just move forward. Okay? No problem. And I hung up. And then she behaved for a while. And then she got erratic again, because that, I guess, is her nature. And sometimes a tiger doesn't change its stripes. So we ended up firing her. That was it. I also had that, I call it a come to Moses moment, because I'm Jewish, so I can't say come to Jesus moment. But I have had that with other clients. I fired clients, and then others have straightened out. I'm not saying we're right. I'm just saying we don't get what we want. We get what we put up with. And there are certain things I'm not willing to put up with, because then it's a drain on my staff. And you know what? It has a really cool effect on the staff.
Oh, for sure.
Because now they're like, oh my God, this guy has my back. Yeah. I love it. They have the confidence. I go, look, if I'm not here, speak up. I don't expect you to be that direct with a client,
right?
But definitely speak up for yourself.
I've been through that with mine, and it was amazing to hear. There was a situation they went through, and it was like I had their back. I mean, look, it's my job to be that counterbalance. I'm going to see things the way I see them. If there's an issue, then I'm going to help address it with my staff, because it's always a teaching moment, never derogatory. But the response that I had their back, and I heard that several times, just the loyalty goes through the roof, because they don't always experience that.
Well, and there's also, you can get rid of the absolute nightmare clients. Those are pretty self-selecting, right? But if you're looking to strategically get rid of, because there's some nice people that are just a pain in the butt, they're not trying to be rude. They're not being horrible. They're just a lot of work for not a lot of money. And sometimes you have to be strategic about who are the clients that are making me the most amount of money with the least amount of effort. And I usually recommend The Pumpkin Plan by Michael Michaelwitz.
I met him in person.
That's cool.
Here in San Antonio, and I have his book, and I love the idea.
Yeah, I love the way he tells
He came to speak as when
stories.
I was a part of EO Entrepreneurs Organization. Yeah. So I'll tell you all a quick joke. This woman walks into a bank, and the typical bank staff guy says, "Okay, what are you here to do?" He goes, "I'm here to open up a bank account." And okay, can you sit there and I'll let you know when it's your turn? Says it's, kind of sensitive and I'm kind of in a hurry and it's quite a large sum of money. So if you don't mind. And he says, "Lady, sit down. I'll call you ready." And he goes, "Look here, you little jerk. Don't talk to me that way because I'll go to your bank manager." He says, "I don't care. Get him." So call the bank manager over. And so the bank employee tells the bank manager, "This lady's kind of rude and pushy. And she wants to open up an account." He goes, "I won't tolerate that." Walks over to her with the bank guy. And the bank manager says, "Ma'am, is there a problem here?" He goes, "There's no problem. I have $1 billion and I want to deposit into this bank." And then the bank manager goes, "And this asshole won't help you?" So there's also a limit, right? I mean, there's also okay, there's certain things you're willing to tolerate based on what people are paying you. But it's usually, there's a direct relationship with the inverse relationship with how much a pain in the ass the client is and how much they're paying you. It's an inverse relationship. It's usually the people paying you very little.
Well, and that's where the entrepreneur can turn up the profit margin on the particular client. It's like, well, look, we've got an increase in fees. We got a blah, 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 whatever that is.
Yeah.
But that's
we
that
call
PITA.
that the pain in the ass tariff.
Tax, yeah.
Yes, tariff.
Tariff these days.
That's the new thing, right? If they're Canadian, it's another 25%.
That's right. And if you're Colombian, we're going to be sending your... Oh, my God. Anyway, don't get me
Good times.
started.
Hey,
Good times.
Look, I love all of this stuff that's going on in the media right now. People are like, squirming and crying and doing all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, the truth is the United States carries a pretty big... we've got a big footprint, right? People are going to have to kind of come along with what's going. Even if they want to have their little fights, they want to bitch and moan a little bit. I think at the end of the day, they're going to have to come around.
Ask USAID, ask UNRWA, ask all these people who, not big fans of, current administration, how things are going when their budgets went to zero, See what happens with
I've just been entertained seeing all the different ways our taxpayer dollars have been being spent.
Oh,
kind of
Doge is
amazing,
It
right?
sounds fake.
It sounds fake.
It absolutely, but there's so much crazy money being spent. The transparency of Doge has been kind of interesting to kind of see.
Yeah.
Okay, this is exactly what's being spent in these particular areas, and then them able to trim that off, or at least say, hey, this is where we need to trim. I think that's amazing. It's just like any business needs to take a look at the numbers because that stuff can get away from you, and before you know it, you've got 10% of your revenue going out on stupid shit.
Right. Well, it happens to individuals too, right? You have all these apps of all these people that are charging you monthly.
Oh, yeah.
And
I had to go
some-
cancel my subscriptions
Some
just today.
people have 2 or 3 Netflix accounts, and Netflix isn't going to tell you, hey, you have duplicate accounts.
but
They're
they won't
happy
let
to
you
charge
share an account. Still salty.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I look, great. This is, you can study what's going on right now and learn a lot about business and how to conduct a business.
I love it. I see it all as positive. All right, well, we got to wrap up. Great chat. I think it's a good idea to talk around a topic. Every once in a while we get, of course, in this case, we had a guest that we canceled short notice, but we can just sit down and have a good conversation. People get to know us better, and I think at the end of the day, that's always a positive thing. So, great chat, everybody. A quick reminder to check out our latest podcast and catch video version of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. That's going to be it for this one. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one.